Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today I'm joined by Blanca Bastos, the founder and managing director of bstructural, a consulting firm dedicated to helping growing companies build the structure they need to scale. Blanca's work sits at the intersection of people, process, and technology, guiding organizations to design operational models that actually support growth instead of slowing it down. In a world where businesses are under pressure to move faster, to tighten execution, and make smarter decisions, her lens on structure, process maturity, and transformation is both timely and vital. Blanca, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. That's a great introduction. Thank you so much for having me, Lawrence.
I think I've positioned bstructural to a certain degree, but there's no one better than yourself to provide us with a little bit more context around bstructural. How long have you been in operation for? What are your areas of operations, and what it is that you essentially do?
Yeah, thank you. Let me tell you, you did a fantastic job in introducing bstructural. So let me give a little bit more of detail to what you have already done. So as you said, bstructural is a process transformation consulting company helping organizations structure the people, processes, and technology to scale growth, to make it more scalable. And so how we started? Well, there's a little bit of a story there. So if you want, I will tell you a little bit of a story. So my actual background is technology. So I have a bachelor's degree in computer science. And when I graduated time ago, I'm not going to tell you how long ago, but time ago, I started doing more of data management, data warehousing, business intelligence, all of that. And when you are in technology and you receive, let's say, requirements or instructions on what to do, it's kind of the last step of the whole process from the moment that business decides to do something all the way that you're going to implement and make it happen. So because it's the last part of it, you always get like all the problems are there, right? Like whatever wasn't done, it's going to bring a problem there, right? So it was difficult to understand the requirements. It was difficult to understand what they wanted. It was difficult to understand why they make certain decisions. And sometimes it was even impossible to deliver in the time frame they wanted, and even the solutions weren't necessarily right. So I started to understand that it was very common to find that type of problems, and this is how I started to move more into analysis. So I wanted to understand more where those requirements were coming from, right? So I started to move towards being in the middle of business and technology, because these two worlds are totally different and they don't speak the same language. So I did a lot of analysis, trying to understand requirements, trying to be the translator between business and technology. And this is how I understood more about business, about what they wanted and about why they wanted certain things and why they made certain decisions. So being there, it was easier for me to offer more solutions. But still, there was something that still was happening all the time. We were wasting time in designing the solution because something was missing. And what was missing? The processes. Processes in place. I mean, all companies have processes. Everything that we do is a process. In any company, any size, any industry, any place in the world. But if those processes are not documented, modeled, understood, implemented, improved, controlled, monitored, then it's very difficult, right? So then what developers had to do when they didn't have processes in place, they had to start to actually map the processes to understand the solution, to understand how to implement things. So this is when I understood that that's a default, or it's a default, a structural default in companies. And it's very common. So this is how I moved more into the world of processes, right? And after working in so many companies, so many projects in the business and the IT side, this is how I founded bstructural, to invite companies to be structural, right? and to connect people, processes, and technology. This is a little bit about the story of the structure, how it started. And how it started, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. This is when I started to put it together, to put the structure together, and moved from being a contractor to be a business owner, which is a whole journey in its own. Yeah. And we started to operate in Australia, and now we are expanding in the UAE. Continue having operations in Australia and expanding here in the UAE.
Yeah, fascinating story, and being able to see an area where business are falling short, and then being able to act on that and essentially create a bridge to to cover that gap is all about entrepreneurial mindsets, etc. So it's thank you for providing us with that context. I mean, when you think about your role as essentially the sort of structural backbone for growing companies, I mean, what's the core decision-making philosophy that guides you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For me, the way I see it and the way that I implement, and also the way I always use the word train people, is always going back to the basics. Check the foundation. Nowadays, we are surrounded by technology, AI. There are so many things about AI and technology and doing everything automatic and all of that we sometimes lose our focus on the foundation of our businesses, foundations of what we do, right? So we always have to go back to see what is actually missing, right? We want to add so many things. We want to bring more people. We want to bring more systems, more technology, AI, but we forget what is actually missing. So the philosophy, the technique, and the methods that we use is about understanding the problem to a very deep level. So analysis and understanding is part of our method. So the first step is when you have that instant that you capture there is a problem. That happens in just an instant of time. There is a problem. But then we have to take a little bit of time to understand that. Eventually, we take a moment for the conclusion, right? So what we usually do is we see something and we just try to conclude what the solution is. And we forget this part, the understanding part of the problem, right? And most of the times when we see a problem, what we see is a consequence of a problem, not the problem in itself. So we always have to go back and deep until we get to the actual problem, right? And doing that, instead of resolving problems, we dissolve problems.
I like that.
When you you like that. Resolving, if you listen to the word, is resolving. You will have to do it all the time. But when you dissolve the problem, then most likely now you are in a better position to grow.
Makes sense to me. And I'd imagine that you deal with a lot of leaders who sort of struggle with clarity when an organization hits that sort of messy middle period of growth. There's the initial entrepreneur, brand new business, everyone's excited. It's all about sort of proving concept, getting on new clients. And, then you kind of reach that middle period where, okay, now we actually need to build out the structure. And we, if we want to continue to grow and continue to scale, the structure's, paramount to that. So do you come across leaders who sort of struggle with clarity when there's a lot of messiness?
Yes, a lot. It's very common because, as we say, right, there are so many things going on at the same time. We want to do everything. We want to excel. We want to do the best for our companies, because I do believe that most of people want to do a great job. They want to contribute. They want to make their businesses or their own or their positions in a company better and better. but sometimes they don't know how to do it. They don't know why it's not happening. So there are many leaders who want to grow and they don't know where to start, right? And it's a little bit tricky because some of them want to grow, some of them want to grow fast, some of them want quick wins, and some of them think they don't need more growth because they based growth in terms of money. Right? So there is a little bit of a variety there. So one of the things that we always say, there are companies which are quite successful, but there is still opportunity for growth. Right? And not only growing in terms of the profit, but growing in terms of the culture, in terms of the satisfaction of the customers, in terms of the satisfactions of the employees. So there is always opportunity for growth. Now, what is difficult is to understand that not always the techniques that we think are going to work will work. All right? Not always, because we forget the foundation. Right? When we start to recreate our mission, our vision, our values, and sometimes we do it as a tick thing to do, but then we forget them, and we are so focused on trying to find clients and trying to, grow the company and have more profits that sometimes we forget our foundations while we are doing this, our values, right? Our people, our clients, all of that. Yeah. So yeah, it's a little bit of a struggle there. Another struggle that we face a lot in the structural is when you talk about processes, many people assume they know what it is, and we all do. We all know the word, and we all know there are processes, but we don't know exactly what it means to manage processes within an organization. And we don't know sometimes how that's basic or part of the basis to do any transformation, either business transformation or digital transformation. So it's actually basic. And basic not from the meaning of easy or simple. It's from the meaning of foundational. It's a base.
A number of guests that I've had on the podcast so far that work in the similar industry to you, management consulting, they find that the leaders that they deal with typically already know what the problem is, but for whatever reason they typically fail to take action. They struggle to make that decision and institute the required change. Do you find that? And if yes, how do you counter that and get them to take the appropriate action?
Yeah, I agree. I do believe that many leaders know what the problem is, but as humans, we have the tendency to confuse the what and the how, right? So sometimes we just mix these two, and then we just struggle to make decisions, right? So sometimes we know what the problem is, but we don't know how it's generated. Therefore, if we don't know how it's generated, we don't know how to solve it.
Makes sense.
And sometimes we think we know what the problem is, but we don't know exactly the solution, because that understanding part of it that I mentioned before is missing, right? So we don't have the actual measures to say, well, this is the problem, this is how it started, this is where we are going to solve the problem, and all of that. So there is not a method. And one of the things that I have struggled with clients as well sometimes, or with leaders, is assuming they know already and not taking the time and not investing the time and money in actually making sure to find the right solution. And they, most of the times, many leaders will believe, no, this is easier, this is more simple, and this is quicker than you are offering. It happens. Yeah. And I understand as well sometimes, because some leaders, they have been disappointed. They have probably trusted some companies and probably they haven't delivered. So it's a little bit of both sides, right? For them to make decisions to invest time, money It's their reputation, it's their company. So it's not that easy to trust. And that's why one of our approaches is to train people to do it themselves, right? Not to do the whole solution, because you cannot do the whole solution just because we train you, because it requires a lot of expertise. But in terms of the foundation, yes. So one of the things that we have achieved successfully is in training people directly and indirectly, or probably that's not the right word, formally and informally, right? When we are working with them, when we are implementing the solution with them. It's not just go and try to implement something, it's just go and to make them understand why, the language we're using, why, how to actually, how can I say that? Assume is part of your work, how to think that way, how to have a little bit more of process mindset, etc. So that transition helps a lot, because even when we are not there as consultants, they can continue doing the work. So training is quite basic. It's important, it's key.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously you want to entrench the changes in the company so that, as you mentioned, once you step away, those changes integrate and continue to have the positive net effect that you have envisioned for the company.
Correct. Because I understand that as businesses, we are consultants, right? So we can offer certain solutions and we have to offer the solutions in steps, right? Solutions sometimes take 2-3 years, depending on what we're talking about, right? And companies can't sometimes commit to 3 years with you just like that, right? It's a lot of money, is the trust, is so many things. So we start to do things in some steps, right? Certain deliverables, right? For example, in our world, one of the things that we do first is the diagnosis of the maturity level the company has in terms of the way they manage the business processes, right? So we do a maturity assessment. So we determine where they are at. We do that working with them, asking questions, getting to understand certain things. And depending on where they are at, then that's one of the deliverables, right? Now you know where you are at. Now what you want to do from here. What level do you want to reach in terms of your maturity level in BPM? What are you willing to do? How we can do it. So then you can do it in stages, right? And as consultants, we say, well, in a way, it's good to have a client that will always call you back. It's more work. It's more clients. That's how life is. There is no secret about that. But in our philosophy, we just want to offer, we want to equip people in understanding processes. And why is that? Because the more companies understand that, and the more they can do it themselves, when they bring us on board, we can achieve much more, and it's going to be a win-win. They're going to be happier, more efficient, and we're going to be as well, succeeding with our clients. We're going to have more recommendations. We're going to have more work. So it's a win-win philosophy.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And I'm quite interested to understand, Blanca, if there are, across the companies that you've supported, are there any common process breakdowns that keep resurfacing, no matter the industry?
Well, yes, there is something common, right? There are some common things. One of them is the fact that the bigger the company, sometimes the bigger the mess. It sounds a little bit, but it's true, right? So, and it's normal. Imagine to manage companies with thousands of employees. That's not an easy job for anyone. So one of the things is there are silos. Like I'm finance, this is my finance processes. I'm HR, oh, this is my HR processes. I am, I don't know, marketing, this is my marketing processes. That doesn't work. That works inefficiently, because what happens is, if I'm finance and you are HR, and then suddenly here is marketing or whatever it is, Yes, there are things that are definitely from finance to do, to improve, to monitor, to whatever. But I'm sure that I need approvals from, I don't know, legal, from operations, right? To do something. So what happens in the middle of finance operations and is not documented. Is up in the air. Nobody knows what to do about it. And this is when they start to create chaos, right? So my process finishes at the moment that I buy something, right? But for me to buy, I need the approval of someone else. So everything would be fantastic if I had that approval. But I don't have that approval because nobody is talking about that approval, because nobody is connecting those two worlds. So processes are functional, right? Processes, when we create the process architecture, we don't see finance processes, these processes, we see capabilities within the company, right? We see strategic processes, core processes, support processes, and whatever is within, right? So that's one of the common things. One of is the fact that they have processes separately according to business units, and that can't be managed properly. The other thing is how they manage the processes. Some companies will have Word documents, right? So I have a Word document saying how we do things, right? So we have all of that 60 pages documents talking about so many things. Nobody will read that document when you start new, unless you love reading documents, which I really doubt. Nobody reads. People start to let me see, and you go, trying to skip pages, and then you ask, until you kind of learn, because you have to, but not the most efficient way. You just learn with what you could learn, right? So something is always missing from a Word document, apart from having hundreds of questions, right? And if you have questions there, it doesn't help, because you will need to go somewhere to find those answers. So you cannot have data out of a Word document. You cannot measure. What are you going to do? Are you going to put in a document, well, this is my process to onboard new people, and then I have to call this person? Are you going to put there how much you take to do each task? No, you don't. Are you going to say how many people are involved in each step? No, you don't. You just tell a story there. So there is no data behind Word documents, and nobody uses that. Nobody uses that. Now, there is another way to do it with, let's say, diagrams, workflows. It could be visual diagrams, any other drawing tool. And it's much better, right? Because you can see the flow a little bit. You see where you start and you continue, etc. But again, you can only draw your process. You cannot manage it, because you cannot just add enough information. You don't put there the risks of each process. You don't put the controls for those risks. You don't put there which systems you use to perform each activity. So all of that data is not captured, right? So then it's when we have to implement a different way to do things. All that knowledge, the Word documents, the visual diagrams, they are useful when you're going to implement BPM as a start for the consultants to have an idea what we're talking about, right? But we still have to do all the work of modeling, from all the process architecture, process governance, meaning who owns what, why, how often, etc., to the models and to the support and documentation. And we have to do it in a proper tool for that. No Visio, no Word, no Excel, no PowerPoint, no Power BI. It's BPM tools or business transformation suites. There are different names for the same. So that's the common things that I have found across many companies in different countries, different sizes, different industries.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, as you said, it's sometimes the larger the company, the larger the mess, or the larger the chaos. So And it's always fascinating to me to hear about stories like this, where these companies have gotten so large that they're obviously successful. They're an entity on their own that is fully functioning, and yet when you sort of dive, into the nitty gritty, you look under the rocks a little bit. You see that they're foundationally they are just very, very weak. So I'm sure that you must, when you look under those rocks and you see this potential, you must be pretty excited at the assistance that you can provide to
Yeah,
these companies.
yeah, definitely. It's I love what I do. So yeah, if they didn't have problems, I wouldn't have a company.
I'd like to just change tack for a second and talk a little bit about structural and in particular around your client acquisition strategy. I mean, the consulting environment is becoming increasingly noisy. There are lots of different players in the market. I'm keen to understand what's been your most effective pathway to winning the right clients, not just more clients. I'm interested in understanding how you're winning the right clients for you and your team.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. As you say, it's not easy, right? There is a lot of competition. It's not only about the competition, it's about the trust that you need to generate with your potential clients, right? So the way that I started was kind of the transition from being a contractor to being a business owner and knowing different companies in the past that I work for, that I used to work for. No, I was never an employee. Most of the times I was a contractor. The nature of my work was always contracting more than, plus I didn't want to be an employee anyway. I like to solve problems and then go, right? So that was kind of the beginning. It was the easy path for me, like word of mouth. Nowadays, it's a little bit more difficult. So we have to do outreach, we have to do training, we have to do, to do diagnosis of the problems with the client first to show certain results and then, and to build that trust. That's the most difficult part. And training has been good for us because the thing is, when we offer the type of services that we offer, and as I said before, sometimes the projects could be from 6 months all the way to 3 years because we work in conjunction with other companies as well, sometimes for a whole digital transformation program, for example, where, for example, we do more about the process side of it and other parts are doing other areas, right? So sometimes it's big projects, big programs, actually. So it's about building that trust. Otherwise, they don't put the money in you.
Mm.
It's very difficult.
How do you develop that trust? Because you're doing your outreach, as you say, and I suppose that's the knocking on the doors. When that door gets opened and someone says, "Yeah, okay, Blanca, I'd love to meet with you," you sit down with them. Does the trust building start immediately in that initial engagement and then obviously expands from there?
Yeah, the trust doesn't start that straight away, right? But I think it will depend on how you communicate with that person. That's a big part of it, right? So I think in the sales process, there is the most difficult part, at least for us, it has been to actually generate the lead, right? But once we are with the client, it gets a little bit less difficult. I'm not saying it's easy, but a little bit less difficult because by listening to them, to their problems, and by asking the right questions, then and explaining certain concepts to them that probably they didn't know before, or they knew in a way, but they couldn't find it in any other consultants, then they open the opportunity. It doesn't mean that always we win the client. Sometimes they don't have the money. Sometimes they don't have the money. They would like to do it, but they don't have the money. And this is when we start to offer training as well, right? Because some of the times they want to do their things on their own, right? Because they are sometimes tired of consultants. And I understand that. I'm not criticizing, I understand that. Sometimes we think we can do the things that we know that it's our business, so we can do it better than anyone else. And sometimes it's true because it's our business, right? But we need the tools to do it. And when I say tools, I'm not only talking about systems or technology and second tools, anything that you need. And the tools that we provide is training. So we like to offer training and equip them to do it themselves if that's what they want. So this is how we try to do it. So we try to generate trust by explaining clearly, asking the right questions, answering their questions, and try to be very honest, right? Because sometimes we are afraid of the clients and we want to win the client and we're going to say yes to everything, but it's not true. You want to say, yes, we're going to do it quickly. No, we are not going to do it quickly. It's not as quick as you think it is. And then instead of you're not going to be in a contradiction with your potential clients, but you have to manage that and say, like, well, we can do certain things quickly. Some others are not that quick. And to make it easier, we can do it in stages. Right? But you're not going to commit to do something quick when you know it's not quick. Right? So then that I have experienced generates a little bit of trust. Right? It's like if you go to the doctor and you definitely have been feeling bad for a while and you can't find the solution and your doctor said, oh, but that's easy. I'm going to solve that in a couple of. You don't feel the trust because you have tried with other doctors and you have tried with some medicines and you have tried with many things. So you think there is something else. If somebody tells you, well, we have to take the time and we're going to do the right diagnosis to see how you go, but we have done this before and we might find the solution, you feel a little bit more in good hands, right? Rather than trying to tell you what you want to hear. Quick, easy, unexpensive. No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like the approach that you take because it's very clear. If I was one of your prospects sitting in front of you and that was the approach you were taking with me, it would be very clear that you're not just here to take my money. There's a genuine interest in you helping me, and you are being honest about the time frame it's going to take to do that. You're not just going to dump everything in 6 months and, cheers, guys, we're out of here. Thank you so much. You're genuinely interested in, okay, this is how long phase 1 is going to take. And then we're going to move into phase 2 and it's going to take you X amount of time. And I think that honesty is often lacking in business. And it's probably a bit of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's good to hear.
I'm quite keen to sort of run with that narrative a little bit. I mean, when you look at the long-term client relationship, you obviously come at it with a long-term view from your perspective. Is that the only approach that you use, the honesty approach, that keeps the relationship strong? Or are you finding that after a certain period of time, the relationship starts to taper off?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's not the only one. I will say that's more at the beginning because the person doesn't know you, right? They don't know you, so they need to see that honesty, that integrity in you. But some other ingredients, which for me are very important, are one, deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Do what you say you're going to do. That's what we call ethics. We have to be ethical. Ethical is not just about the good manners or the good things. Ethical means that you do what you say you're going to do, whether you like it or not, whether you regret to have committed to that. You have committed, you have to do it. That's part of generating the trust as well. And not only the trust, but to have a good relationship with your client, with your stakeholders. Another ingredient which is important for me is joy. Why joy? Imagine how boring for some people could be processes. That could be like going to the dentist, like, oh my God, I have to go because there is no other option, right? But for some people, especially some people are very creative or they are, in a total different space. They don't want to have anything to do with processes, but they have to collaborate in the project. You have to make it fun somehow. right? You have to talk to them. You have to sometimes start your meeting with a personal connection, right? You have to understand that person. You need to understand who is who. You cannot apply the same techniques of capturing information from people with every person that you talk, right? With some people, you have to be more patient. With some other people, you can be more relaxed because they get it really quick. So there are different ingredients, for me is communication, is respect, is being honest, is being ethical. So there are different things. And listening, right? Listening is very important in this world of consulting because sometimes your stakeholder is telling you something directly, but sometimes they are saying without saying, right? And you have to listen to that as well. And sometimes they are saying things without even knowing why they are saying it. So you have to try to listen everything in what they are saying and question about it. Even though we are from the technology space, and processes is in a way part of it because it's also part of people. We can't forget that the center of everything is people. You can have the best solution, the best system, the best technology, but if people don't buy that technology, if they don't buy the concept, you have nothing. So you have to make sure that you have that people approach present every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember someone once, a very long time ago, gave me a piece of advice that it was under promise and over deliver every time. That's the best way to make a big impact. I'm quite keen to understand, Blanca, looking at bstructural as a company in its entirety, what would you say is working very well for the company right now?
Well, what is working very well for us is structuring our company the way that we ask our clients to do it. All right. So we are putting our processes in place properly, even being a small company. Some companies believe they need to be big to start to do the processes. No, I don't agree with that. Right. Even if your processes are small, few of them only, you have to have them clear. Even if you don't have all the roles complete in your company yet, in your processes, the roles appear. Even if you do 3 roles, even if you do 4 roles, you have to identify the roles in your processes because that's the way you are going to grow. Then you will know who to onboard and how much they are going to cost, what activities they are going to do, what processes they are going to get, all of that, right? So what is working really well with us is in a way that organizing and structuring our company properly, and also training, that we are doing training and training people, and we're doing that well, but we want to do it even better. We want to train people in the world of process transformation, which is huge, to a point where many companies are more and more aware of what it means. There is still a lot of lack of information in this world of processes, and that's what we want to do even better.
And on the flip side of that question, what would you say is currently not working very well within the company, or where are the constant friction points or bottlenecks that you need to navigate?
Yeah, I would say that sales is a little bit not very strong at the moment. Definitely is a process that we have to improve. Sales, I would say that's a little bit our weaknesses at the moment. Yes. Yeah. And I would say visibility as well. Well, that's part of the sales, right? Visibility. Yeah.
Sales and marketing, they go hand in hand.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And Blanca, as you look ahead for bstructural, I mean, where do you see the company evolving over the next few years?
Yeah, so I want bstructural to grow, to be process transformation consulting firm that is quite recognized for that, and is recognized for not only implementing operational excellence, but also educating people on that. Right? I want bstructural to be recognized that way. We are operating in Australia and the UAE, but I would like to, in the future, to go to other markets as well and to partner with other companies as we are already doing. And also, I would like the company not to depend on me at all. That if I'm in the company or not, there's a moment when if I'm not in the company is as good as if I am in the company, or even better.
If our listeners and viewers would like to reach out to you and the team at bstructural and connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Usually, they can go to my website, bstructural.com. We are in LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is just Blanca Bastos. I'm lucky that most of the times when I put my name, Blanca Bastos, it goes to the first search, which is fantastic. That's the best two ways, LinkedIn and my website.
Amazing, Blanca. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join the podcast today. It really has been a fascinating conversation, diving into some of the challenges that you help your clients overcome, talking a little bit about bstructural as a company as well, and then obviously looking ahead, where you want to see the company go to, the direction you see it going. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you and to your audience. It's always fantastic to get visible to other audiences.
Well, that's it for today's episode of the Aegance Offscript podcast. If this conversation sparked something, a thought, a question, or a new way of seeing your own business, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.